The Edmonton Oilers get bigger and badder, and the Boston Bruins are sellers? We have a trade to announce, a three-way trade to announce. Sometimes there's confusion around three-way trades and the way they work. It's not one trade, technically. As the Oilers put in their press release for this trade, it's actually three trades. So trade one is between the Boston Bruins and the New Jersey Devils, who are the third team in this trade to help facilitate. And by facilitate, I mean retain salary so that the player's cheaper. That's it. The Boston Bruins trade Trent Frederic, 50% salary retained, to the New Jersey Devils in exchange for unsigned draft choice Peter Hauser. Trade 2, the New Jersey Devils trade Trent Frederic, 50% retained again, to Edmonton in exchange for unsigned draft choice Shane LeChance. And trade 3, Boston trades Max Jones, a forward, and unsigned draft choice Peter Hauser to Edmonton in exchange for Max Wanner, St. Louis's second-round pick in 2025, which was owned by Edmonton, and Edmonton's own fourth-round selection in 2026. Steve, that is tremendously confusing. Just say who got what. Fair. Here's what everybody got. The New Jersey Devils get Shane LeChance. They got him because they retained 50% of Trent Frederic's salary. That's what they get. That's their end of the bargain here. And we'll talk about all the specific players in a sec. The Boston Bruins, for their troubles, get Max Wanner, a 21-year-old defensive prospect, a second-round pick in 2025, and a fourth-round pick in 2026. That's not bad at all. The Edmonton Oilers, on the other hand, get Trent Frederic and Max Jones. I love when you don't need to be confused about why a team is doing something. Trent Frederic is 6'3", 221 pounds. Beef! Max Jones is also 6'3", 216 pounds. Beef! The Edmonton Oilers are getting bigger for the Stanley Cup playoffs, just like they did last year. Now, Max Jones hasn't exactly had a banner year in the NHL. In fact, he's barely been in the NHL at all. He's played 7 games with the Bruins and registered 0 points. But the 27-year-old first-round pick of the Ducks in 2016, by the way, has had a pretty good season in the A. 13 goals, 21 points in 38 games. Not bad. And in terms of his Stanley Cup playoff experience, he has none. In terms of his AHL playoff experience, he has minimal, 17 games. But he did win a championship with the London Knights of the OHL in 2016 on a stacked Knights roster. Matthew Tkachuk was there. Mitch Marner was there. Let me just look. Oh, have you ever heard of Evan Bouchard? He was at Robert Thomas. Who wasn't on this team? Listen, don't overthink it. Depth. And if you're going to have depth, they might as well be huge. Max Jones ticks those boxes for Edmonton. As for Trent Frederic, he's very interesting. Another guy is a former first-round pick. First-round pick in 2016, actually, after Max Jones. Last year, he had a career high in points in Boston with 40. Career high in goals with 18. Career high in playoff points with 5. Has this year been a continuation of that? No. 8 goals, 7 assists, 15 points in 57 games. But, and this is important when you're huge, still huge. He was much younger when this clip happened, but I still remember him mic'd up, absolutely running someone over. You hear the violence with which he hit this player with, and then he looks at the opposing bench and just screams, "Who wants it?" before skating off. He's a Boston Bruin made in a lab to be a Boston Bruin, so it's going to be weird seeing him in another uniform. But if you're the Boston Bruins and you're kind of punting on this season, and you got a guy who's highly coveted and on an expiring contract, what should you do? The Bruins are probably not going to make the playoffs this year. They might. They're right in it, but I doubt it. And it's tough. Brad Marchand was just listed as injured week to week. Charlie McAvoy, not coming back anytime soon. Hampus Lindholm, not coming back anytime soon. Right there is your captain and your top D pair. That is a tough hill to climb. The Bruins could easily be right back at it in playoff contention next year. This is a one-year blip, and they are taking advantage of it. For their troubles, they get a prospect and 2 pretty good picks. Now, there is a wrinkle here for the Oilers. And I use the word wrinkle because that's what CJ used. Chris Johnston of SDPN's The Chris Johnston Show. An interesting wrinkle to the Oilers' acquisition of Trent Frederic. At this point, there's no indication if he'll be healthy enough to play before the playoffs. So there's a chance he can remain on LTIR for the balance of the season. Oh, yeah, I should have mentioned, Trent Frederic is hurt. Even more wrinkles from CJ. The Boston Bruins are also retaining 50% on Trent Frederic, so the Oilers get him on a prorated $575,000 cap hit for the remainder of the season. So not even 575. It's prorated. Yes, the Oilers had to give up picks and a prospect for this player, but they get him against the cap virtually for free. And if you're the Edmonton Oilers right now, you have all these stars in their prime. Connor McDavid's contract is up next year, and you just went to the Stanley Cup final. What do you need a draft pick for? Sorry, I think what you might have heard was draft picks. I didn't say draft picks. You don't need a draft pick. You don't need to pick this year. Send every pick out the door and try to win a cup. The wrinkle, I love that word now. The wrinkle of getting Trent Frederic and he doesn't play with you until the playoffs begin, that's very interesting. There's no guarantee a player is ever going to work out when you acquire them at the trade deadline, but there's even less guarantee when that guy doesn't play a game for you before the Stanley Cup playoffs. How he fits into Edmonton's plans onto their roster is going to be fascinating. We know what he does. He makes the Oilers bigger and harder to play against. He makes them more aggressive. The playoffs were built for a player like Trent Frederic. But if you're a believer that chemistry is kind of an important thing, he's not going to have much with this team. They get bigger, they get better, but there's still a lot of regular season games left to play. Positioning in the standings, figuring out who your opponent's going to be, figuring out where you fit in on your team. There's no guarantee that this is a home run out of the park for the Edmonton Oilers. I like the fit in general. I want a guy like Trent Frederic on my team. The fact he doesn't play a game for you before the playoffs, it's a bit of a red flag. Now, before I get to the Bruins, I want to talk about the Devils getting Shane Lachance here because this is huge. Like, literally, he's 6'5". Shane Lachance is a 21-year-old, 6'5", 218-pound forward currently playing college hockey. 10 goals, 15 assists for 25 points in 35 games this season with Boston University, which is not bad at all. Especially, once again, if you're not going to have the greatest numbers, you better be huge. He has pretty good numbers, and he's huge. He has more points than Cole Yzerman, first-round pick of the Islanders last year. And, I should mention, a teammate of his at Boston University. I didn't just pick his name out of a hat. All that to say, he's a 6th-round pick that the Oilers turned into somebody that teams out there actually want. And for the Devils, for just money, they get a pretty nice little piece. And the Devils, for a team that is very likely going to make the playoffs this year, they actually have a lot of picks. They don't have a first this year, but they have 3 seconds. I don't know if this player helps you immediately. I'm guessing he doesn't, but it's good to have in your organization, is it not? One thing that confused me, the Devils, I thought, had a lot of cap space. That's why they made this deal. They don't. But if I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen any news about Jack Hughes being placed on LTIR yet. I'm assuming that happens, unfortunately. Or, maybe even more exciting, something else happens. Now, the Bruins. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough situation that they're in. You could trade Brad Marchand. They don't want to do that. Neither does Brad. If I'm totally honest, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, usually, aging veteran, expiring contract, yeah, you throw that guy out the window. This guy's your captain, and CJ had a great quote the other day on the CJ show, which you can check out here on the SDPN YouTube channel. Marchand is part of the fabric of the team. And this season, you can be pretty confident is a blip. The season started awfully, and you fired your coach, and a lot of things were weird for the Bruins, but they ended up righting the ship enough that they should be in a playoff spot right now. You lose your entire first pair, you lose Marchand. Yeah, no, you're kind of screwed. So you might as well come out of it with a 2nd-round pick, which the Oilers got from the St. Louis Blues. That was when they got double offer sheeted this summer. So while that offer sheet situation has worked out pretty well for the Blues so far, here's an example of the Oilers using the assets they got from those offer sheets to help them try to win a cup this year. They get a 4th. Better than a kick in the pants. And they get Max Wanner, who actually HockeyDB lists as Maximus Wanner, which rules. 6'3" defenseman who recently turned pro from the WHL. He's played the last 2 seasons with the Bakersfield Condors. Only 22 games this season, only 2 points. He's only 21. We have the same birthday. I was like, oh, he's 21. When does he turn 22? We have the same birthday. March 12th, it's coming up. What do you want? What did you ask for? Oh, you know what? I like this guy now. He's going to be a great player. The only other 2 NHL players I can think of that have the same birthday is, I think, Mikko Koivu and Byron Frazee. Anyway, where was I? Maximus Wanner is the best and going to win the Norris. Peter Hauser, 2021 draft pick, also involved in this deal. wouldn't overthink it. He's a forward with 4 points in 25 games in the Czech League this season. And let me just check. He does not have the same birthday as me, so I don't know. I'm not as sure about his future. Sorry, if you're an NHL prospect, you have to be born March 12th for me to take you seriously. So, what do you think of this deal? It's really interesting, isn't it? The Bruins end of it, to me, is pretty obvious. They get some good assets that they could use to get better. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't even use those draft picks to pick anyone. They just trade them at the draft or something just to compete next year. If they're unwilling to move Marchand, what else are the Bruins potentially willing to do at this deadline? They got some days left. What do you think of the Devils' end in all this? Because they kind of spent cap space that they don't currently have, but they get a really interesting looking prospect out of it. And the Edmonton Oilers, they get two big players that can help them out on their Stanley Cup playoff run, but not until their Stanley Cup playoff run. Leave a comment in the comment box down below, but for now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. Friday, SDPN is the place to be. We're going to be making videos all trade deadline day, and then afterward we're going to have a little podcast, and it's going to be good for your ears and eyes.